Hi, it's Dan from Bocain Designs, and in today's video I'm going to be optimizing a client's WordPress website using the plugin WP Rocket. And this website is a live website that has quite a number of plugin dependencies, as you can see. So we're going to look for anything in here that we may want to consolidate or remove while optimizing the site. A lot of times people have things installed that they don't actually need or that they're not actually using. For example, WP File Manager does not need to stay active all the time. There's a good chance somebody installed it to use it once and then never did anything with it again. So we're going to go ahead and deactivate this. And just something to note, make sure you're only deactivating plugins you know you can deactivate without causing a problem. I've scouted out how things are being used on the website, so like all-in-one migration was used one time to bring the website here. It's not being used to do a recurring backup. They have Updraft Plus doing backups, so we're going to deactivate all-in-one WP migration. And I'm going to go down the list and quickly deactivate other plugins that I know that they're not using correctly or at all. In this case, because you're using WP Rocket, we don't want this perf matters. It does make your site it claims to make your site faster, but this is not going to be better than WP Rocket, so we're going to get rid of it. Despite the name of the plugin, search engine visibility is not really all that good and does not help your website as much as you might hope for, and is worth deactivating and removing. And we're going to leave everything else in place. We technically don't need this plugin, but I don't have a way to get into the client's Cloudflare account, but WP Rocket alone can handle the Cloudflare connection, so you don't need two plugins for that same process. So normally I'd say get rid of this. In my case, if I deactivate it, I might break his website, so we're not going to do that. Okay, so now that we have deactivated the unnecessary plugins, the next thing we like to do is run speed tests, and I've actually ran these speed tests before I started. That way the tests were taken before any changes have been made. So we'll quickly look at what I got. On Google Mobile, we got a site that it basically loaded in 3 seconds, finished loading in just over 6 seconds, and there's a couple of suggestions down here. On desktop, it loads in under a second and completely in under 2 seconds, and there's still a few suggestions on how we can improve it. Cumulative layout shift is awfully high, and you can actually see in the thumbnails why. The site goes from being just a little bit of text and blank space to kind of some images load, some more images load, and then everything else fills in. So that's really affecting the shift score. And GT metrics test also shows that there's ways to improve it. We're seeing the shift as an issue. We're not lazy loading a large contentful paint image, and that's basically you can put a line of code into your site header that preloads a few images on the page. Generally, you might do the logo and like the biggest image above the fold, or in this website, we might do multiple images if we can do that. That way, those load as quickly as possible. And we want to make sure all these scores are higher. Ideally, you want to hit green on everything for desktop. Okay, so we're going to go into WordPress now. And again, we're using WP Rocket, which is wp-rocket.me. Great plugin. You can buy it for your website or buy it for all your websites. They have different packages. All the packages come with the same features from what I recall. And it really is the best plugin for optimizing most WordPress websites. Okay, so let's go into WP Rocket and get things moving. We'll just go from top to bottom through the different sections on the program. So we're going to close some of these annoying little windows so they hopefully don't come back, and we'll go ahead and go to cache, basic caching, and we're going to leave these as is. We don't need a separate file in almost every case. It's fine to leave just the one checkbox. It's pretty rare that you need this, but if you do have a lot of mobile issues, consider turning it on and see if that resolves them. Let's go to File Optimization, and we're going to leave on Minify CSS. We're going to leave on Combine for now. We're going to leave on Minify JavaScript. We're going to turn on Defer JavaScript, and we're going to turn on Delay JavaScript as well. But because the site uses Elementor and a couple other plugins, WP Rocket has a list of commands or code lines you can put in here, and if you click this link right here, it's going to bring you to their website, and there is a way to get to those. Here we go. So here's a list of plugins, so just look through the list and find what plugins are on the website. So we know we're using Elementor and Elementor Pro, so we're going to click on that, and it brings us to a space, and just copy all of this and paste. And because we are caching for logged in users, we also want to grab this section as well. And what I'm doing right now isn't always necessary. It's not always going to, like, you don't have to do this on every Elementor site, but doing this does reduce the chances of problems. So we're going to hit Save Changes. And for now, we're done on this tab. We're going to come back after we do a few more changes and run a fresh scan. We are most likely going to change optimize CSS to either reduce CSS or to do a crit CSS generation. But let's go on to Media and turn on Lazy Loading Services. So click on Enable for Images, Enable for iframes and videos, and we're going to replace iframes with the preview image, and also go ahead and add the missing image dimensions. And before we save this change, we want to do one more thing. We want to put one image minimum in this spot. So I'm loading the home page, and we're going to see if we can right click on the logo. Yep, we can. So we're going to do copy image link, paste it in the box, and then just leave the file name, so logo.svg. And we're just telling Rocket not to lazy load the logo. This way the logo appears with the website rather than after. The logo is the top image generally, and it's also like the thing you want people to see immediately. So let's just have it load quickly. And in this case, an SVG is going to load fast, so it shouldn't even slow us down. Let's go ahead and click Save Changes. Okay, so let's go on to the Preload tab. And because the client is using Yoast SEO, we're going to go ahead and make sure we're preloading based on sitemap, and let's tell it to use the Yoast sitemap because Yoast is pretty good at keeping the sitemap up to date. So it'll always keep things preloading as needed. If you don't have it turned on, turn preloading links on, and then these two boxes, we're going to go back to our GT metrics test and fill in these boxes based on the tests. So first we'll do prefetch DNS. So here's our test from before, and we're going to the waterfall tab. And on the waterfall tab, click on the domain link at the top here, and you'll see you can sort the columns by the domain that is referencing each item. So let's go ahead and sort it so we can see all the third-party domains. We don't care about the main domain. We're going to leave this off our list, but we're going to copy everything else one of each time. So like PayPal's in here multiple times. We don't have to copy each one. We're just going to take one of them. So I typically just double-click on the name, go back here, and then we'll quickly do the rest. And notice I am grabbing PayPal and t.paypal.com because those are considered different because one has a subdomain, but we can skip all the other PayPals because they are the same. Okay, so that bit is done. Now we want to do preloading of fonts, and we're going to go back to our waterfall test and click on this little button here that says fonts, and it's going to show you all the fonts on your website. And in this case, we only want the ones that are loaded through our server, so the ones that are from our domain. So we'll click on the first one, and in this case, click on it once, it expands the box, and then I click over here on the right and copy it. That seems to be the quickest way for me to do it. And then we just go through and copy them all. And depending on how your website's designed, you might have one of these, you might have 10 of these. Hopefully you don't have too many of them. Elementor by itself adds a few to almost every website, so if you kind of know which ones to include all the time, you can kind of save yourself time and put them in here. So okay, we've added our domains, we've added our preloads, we've told it to do the sitemap. Let's click Save Change. go to Advanced Rules now, the next tab on the left. And sometimes you have pages that don't perform well with Rocket. We don't know which pages those might be yet on this website. There might not be any, but sometimes you'll catch a page that just isn't working, so you can include them in this page. Basically, you can pop the URL in this box and it'll tell it not to cache it, so it won't treat it the same way as all the other pages. The page might load a little slower, but it won't be broken, so that's ideal. And generally, you want to check any of these that make sense. In this case, the client already set this up for themselves, so I'm going to leave these as is, but I usually don't do a revisions cleanup unless I know I don't need the revisions. Some people like having a lot of revisions, and if you delete them every week, that could be bad for their workflow. But other than that, everything else could be checked, and you can tell it to run this automated weekly or daily or monthly. Next is the heartbeat, and you can enable this and pretty much change these to disabled or as reduced activity, depending on if you do disabled and it breaks your site, put it in reduced activity instead, and that should be the healthy medium. So we're done doing the initial optimization. We're going to come back to file optimization in a minute, but now that we've done everything, we've saved our last settings. We're going to go up to Rocket, hover over it, and tell it to do clear cache. And you can see it also finished preloading. And now we're going to do this Cloudflare purge whole cache. And this isn't something most sites have. If you don't use Cloudflare, you can skip this step, but because this website does use it, we do need to clear Cloudflare because otherwise Cloudflare is going to be showing the old files. So we're going to do this. Since it's going to take 30 seconds, I'm going to pause recording and come back when it's ready. Okay, so we have finished regenerating our cache everywhere. We're going to quickly open the tab up in a private window and make sure everything looks fine. So it still seems a little slow, but everything is still loading. We haven't finished our file optimization, so that's okay. Let's go ahead and run tests and see what we have going on in terms of improvements and recommendations. So we'll click retest on GT metrics, and on Google we'll just come back and click analyze again, and I'm going to let these run and pause while they run. So we'll be back in a moment. Okay, so the tests have finished running, and we can see that we're going to pull up the original test over here, and we had a structure of 88, performance of 48, and a first contentful paint of 1.3, and a largest content of 1.8. And if we look at it now, we can see that the performance has gone down, the structure has gone up, the page does load much quicker, the initial load, and the longest contentful paint, though, is a second, 1.2 seconds longer, and that's because all the JavaScript and things have been pushed to the end, and it doesn't really create an issue for the user, but these tests will pick that up. And we can definitely improve the performance from here. We haven't finished, but this is kind of the initial, let's spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes going through, making some easy changes. So let's also look at Google's results, and we'll see their desktop shows us loading pretty good. The score is low, but really what matters is how fast is the website. But we still want to fix this cumulative layout shift because that is a concern for me. And it really does suck as a user experience when the page loads and then everything changes moments later. Let's look at mobile, and the same thing could be said here. The site basically loads as fast as it did before for the initial. We had 3.3 before. Largest contentful paint, though, has been reduced. It was 6.3 seconds and now it's 4.5, but I think we could do a bit better also, especially when we look at the recommendations. So we want to do a bit more with the JavaScript. We can definitely do more with the CSS, that was already planned. And then we haven't addressed the images yet, so we haven't done something to serve WebP images yet, like Imagify or Smush. So we're going to go ahead and set that up. So let's go back into WordPress and click Optimize CSS. And in this case, we don't want to remove CSS on a site like this. It's a bigger website. We don't know it as well, and there's a lot of opportunity for this to go wrong. So we're going to go with load CSS asynchronously, and then copy the domain name and go to a critical CSS generator. I can put this in the link below, but basically in the description below. corewebvitals.io tools, critical CSS generator. Put your web address in this box and click generate. The CSS, remove CSS feature that Rocket offers is pretty good when your site's smaller or when you know your website well. But the reason I'm not using it on this website is I've seen it remove icons, I've seen it change font styles. I've seen it do things that just, you would not be happy with if it was your website and like somebody made your site faster, but they changed parts of your design unintentionally. So the crit CSS will let us load the page faster, but we're still loading a big CSS file, so that might be an issue. We're going to go ahead and combine JavaScript files on this as well and click Save Changes. So the cache has been run. It's going to go ahead and create the critical CSS for all the different pages on the site. So while that's running, we're going to go to plugins and we're going to click Add New. And we're going to add Imagify. And in my case, I have a license for it. You can get a free API from their website. I think it gives you a gigabyte of usage. But we're going to go ahead and activate my key, so I'm going to quickly pause the video and go ahead and do that. Okay, so we've installed and activated it, and we're going to go ahead and turn things on. So we're going to create WebP images. We're going to display images with that format using it. Basically, these should be all set up already. The default settings are likely what you need. And then depending on your website, you may want to change this number. You could reduce it further if you know you don't do bigger images. Or likewise, if you never use the thumbnail version of images on your site, you could probably uncheck it just to save yourself the optimization. But if you have plenty of hard drive space, you might as well let Imagify optimize everything here. So come on down here, click Save Changes, or click Save and go to Bulk Optimizer. So we want to go to the optimizer and finish optimizing our images. And you can see already 97% of the images on the site have been optimized. So we're going to go ahead and click this Imagify them all button just to finish them off. Okay, so we're going to go back to our tests and click Retest. And we'll go ahead and click Analyze. Okay, so now we can see our structure has gone down, our performance has gone up. We're loading the site even faster now. The largest contentful paint is a bit more reasonable. I still think there's improvements to be made, but we are seeing some better improvements. Here we go. On mobile, on desktop now, you can see we're loading initially half a second faster, and this time has been cut down in half already. And we can even see that not everything that they're recommending has been done. So it looks like our lazy load isn't working for an image or two. And that might be because one's a background image. A lot of times with Elementor sites, if an image is a background image, it'll get loaded in a way that this will tell you to lazy load it, but Elementor is loading the image in a way that you can't really lazy load it. So sometimes you have to ignore these. Looks like one of our images hasn't been converted yet. And that's the reason, because if you notice where it's being loaded from, this is a totally different website. So we probably want to take this image and put a version of it on the client server rather than loading it off of a third-party server, because then we can optimize it and save. They're claiming we can make the file size half its current. So we're going to go ahead and do the desktop settings, and we can see it's fast, but it's still pretty low score, 64. we want to take care of this. So they're telling us this image should get loaded in an advanced form, basically preloading this image. So we're going to prep some code and pop it into the website. Okay, so let's go back to the client's website, and we're going to replace that one image, and then we're going to preload that other image. So here we are at WordPress, and if it happens to be an Elementor Pro website, this might be the quickest way to do it. It might not be the best way depending on how your site's set up, but this is going to work in their website. If you have a child theme, you could put this in your function file, but let's go ahead and do custom code. And I've already got it saved to my clipboard. I'll explain it in a moment. Click Add New Custom Code. We're going to call this header preload. Make sure the location is selected as head, and then we're going to paste what I have on the clipboard. So what we're doing is we're telling it to preload this file, and this is the image that Google referenced here. So we're going to fulfill this request right now, but with this little piece of code. And you can see it's just the path of the image, link, rel, preload, image, as image. And you can just copy paste this. I'll actually include this in the description for your own purpose. And then click publish and do entire site, save and close. And if you had a few images that all load in the same space, you might include a few of these lines just with each one for each image that you want to preload this way. So we've done that, and we want to fix that one image. So I think it's the background image on the home page. So let's go take a look at the website. It's a long, narrow image. Yeah, it's going to be that background image. So let's check out theme options. Header. Aha, okay, so general, background. You can see here's the actual link to it. We're going to go ahead and click upload, and I've already downloaded it to my computer. We're going to just re-upload the same file. So now we can click Save Changes. And let's go ahead and clear our cache. Okay, so we have cleared our cache, we've let it regenerate, and we're going to go ahead and run another set of tests. So here's our most recent test. We'll go ahead and retest, and we'll go ahead and retest here. Okay, so we have finished running our new tests, and we're going to take a quick look at everything. Looks like we could do a bit better on mobile. We're still a little slower than I'd prefer to be. I'd like to see this in the 2 seconds at the very least, and this underneath 4. But let's take a look at desktop, and desktop certainly is looking much better than the initial. The layout shift is still very high, but everything else is pretty good. So we just want to see if we can address that, and by addressing that, we'll probably also fix this. Let's take a look at GT metrics, and we can see it's also improved quite considerably, actually. If we look at the initial test where we had 1.3, 1.8, and 3.7, and some reds, we can see we now have a couple of reds still, but we are much faster all around. So I think, again, we just fixed the cumulative layout shift. We should be in good shape with this project. And in this case, this website, it's easy for me to point to the issue. We can even see it happening right here. And that is, you can see the pictures are here in this big blank spot. But when we actually go to the website, we can see that there's a big spot there. And then when you move the mouse cursor, when you interact with the page, this fills in. And that is because we have enabled JavaScript delay. Basically, you see it's delaying it till the mouse interaction, and that's why we see that shift. So we need to figure out what is loading that initial frame, what is all this being loaded from, and we want to exclude those scripts. That way we can keep the setting enabled because everything will load really fast, but we get rid of the shift that's occurring at the top. So I just went ahead and right-clicked and did inspect element. This is a little bit more complicated, but we can see it's Elementor. So it's an Elementor widget. So we're going to click that link at the bottom of that box, click on plugins. And I know we did this earlier, we put some of this code in there. I was fiddling with settings before and removed it, but putting it in does not fix the issue. But we're going to go ahead and tell it to exempt loading Elementor related scripts. But let's also look, here we go, at what else is it coming from. So it's coming from this Callie's banner. So this is the theme. The theme has its own Elementor tool. So we want to exclude theme-related JavaScript potentially. So let's go to the WordPress admin screen. Let's click Save Changes here just to save that little copy paste. And then we're going to go to Appearances. We're going to go to Theme File Editor. I'm opening it up in a new tab. And we're going to go in and see if we can figure out where would they have the JavaScript for Elementor. So Assets, JavaScript, Elementor. So we want to be safe, let's just exclude all theme JavaScript for now. So we're going to click on this Elementor.js file real quick. And the main reason I'm doing that is because I'm lazy and I just want to be able to copy the file path with ease. You can actually go ahead and do that. And then we're going to come back here, go to File Optimization, scroll down. Let's make this box a little bit bigger and paste what I just got. But we also need to include the lead up, so WP content, themes, the name of the theme folder, I will double check, but I believe is that. Let's go back here and verify what it's actually called. Yeah, yep, K-A-L-L-E-S. K-A-L-L-E-S. Okay, so we're telling it to exclude this Java file or JavaScript file specifically. If we wanted to do everything in here, we could take out that and put parentheses, star.j. Oh, I left out the star. And this is basically say any file in this folder that ends in .js will be excluded. Let's go ahead and click Save. Okay, so I've saved those settings. We're going to go back and go ahead and reload the home page and see what happens without an interaction. So we reload and we can see everything appeared. I didn't move the mouse at all. Let's go ahead and run fresh tests again and see if that's improved our cumulative layout shift. Okay, so we have just finished running our new tests and we're going to take a quick look at what we had before and after. So the initial before, not like 10 minutes before, but before we started on the project. So we had a 30 as a total performance score on mobile. We were loading in 3.3 seconds initially with a largest contentful of 6.3. So we can see we are a little slower here. We are a bit faster here. The time till interactive is much better. The blocking time is half. So we are definitely making an improvement for mobile. And we'll see how it feels on mobile when you actually pull it up on the phone. But this is a good thing to see for now. Let's go ahead and go to desktop. Desktop's looking much better. So we had a 59 before with a 0.08 and a 1.6. And now we're looking at 0.08 and then a 1 second flat load time. Cumulative layout shift is now not an issue. So we've resolved that as well. And then if we look at GT metrics, we can see this is also much better. So initially we had a 49 or 48 and an 88 with 1.3 and a 1.8, and now we're looking at 0.8 seconds. The page pretty much just loads, no problems at all. Much higher scores all around. And then I also ran a pingdom test, and that came in at 0.7 seconds, down from about 2 seconds. So 3 different tests, we're seeing improvements, actually 4 different tests. I've also run Google Lighthouse. So Google Lighthouse is something you can run in Chrome browser. You just go to your website in Chrome, hit F12, and then go to the Lighthouse tab and click Generate Report. And that's going to run a test very similar to what you see on Google's website, but I always run individual tests as well. So you can see here's the initial Lighthouse test. So 3.5 seconds and 6.4. And now you can see we're loading a little bit faster, 3 seconds, but finishing loading much faster, 3 seconds, so half the time. Time till interactive is cut in half. Blocking time is lower, speed index is lower, and cumulative layout shift is the same. And then for desktop, we have very similar to results where everything has improved. Actually, in this case, it's loading a tiny bit slower, but everything finishes much faster. In 1.1 seconds, the site loads and is done loading, whereas over here it was 1.7 seconds. So we're going to call this a pretty good improvement because we also fixed the cumulative layout shift, which was 0.7. Now it's 0.001, so much better. So I'm going to go ahead and grab screenshots of Google Drive or of Google Speed, and this is done. I'm going to hand it off to the client and explain the improvements and what's left that we could do to their site to make it faster. They had some design changes that I would recommend doing. A lot of DOMs were showing up, and that's just, they built the site with Elementor, which adds a lot of extra HTML, and you can sometimes strip some of that away by rethinking your design.